The dust-laden wind swept through the small frontier town of Stockton, California. As Sarah Winters stumbled off the stagecoach, her emerald eyes scanning nervously for any sign of familiar faces. It was 1876, and the mining town bustled with prospectors, gamblers, and those seeking fortune in the aftermath of the gold rush. Sarah clutched her worn carpetbag tightly against her chest, the letter from her brothers burning a hole in her pocket. They would come for her, all 7 of them, and heaven help anyone who stood in their way. The journey from Boston had been grueling, but necessary. Sarah had fled in the dead of night, leaving behind a life of privilege and a marriage arrangement that would have suffocated her spirit. At 22, she refused to be bartered away like cattle to settle her late father's gambling debts. The West offered something Boston never could: freedom. "You look lost, miss," a deep voice rumbled behind her. Sarah whirled around, coming face to face with a tall man whose features were partially obscured by the brim of his Stetson. The sun silhouetted his broad shoulders, revealing only the glint of piercing blue eyes and the shadow of stubble along a strong jawline. "I'm quite all right, thank you," she replied, lifting her chin with practiced poise despite her exhaustion. The stranger stepped forward into the light, and Sarah's breath caught. He was handsome in a rugged way that Boston gentlemen could never achieve: tanned skin weathered by sun and wind, laugh lines crinkling at the corners of his eyes, and shoulders that spoke of hard labor rather than tailored suits. "Name's Adam Zane," he said, removing his hat in a gesture of politeness that seemed at odds with his otherwise rough appearance. "Town sheriff, and you're clearly not from around these parts." Sarah hesitated, weighing her options. A sheriff might be helpful or dangerous if her brothers had already sent telegrams ahead. "Sarah Winters," she finally offered, "I've come for a fresh start." Adam's eyes narrowed slightly, as though detecting the half-truth in her words. "Well, Miss Winters, Stockton's a decent enough place for new beginnings if you can handle the dust, the heat, and the occasional trouble that rolls through with the tumbleweeds." A commotion down the street drew both their attention. A group of miners had erupted into a brawl outside the saloon, their shouts carrying on the afternoon air. Adam sighed, replacing his hat. "Speaking of trouble, you might want to get yourself settled at Mrs. Peterson's boarding house 3 buildings down, blue shutters. Tell her Adam sent you." With a tip of his hat, he strode purposefully toward the disturbance, his hand resting casually on the pistol at his hip. Sarah watched him go, an unexpected flutter in her chest. She quickly dismissed it. Men, especially handsome ones with authority, were complications she couldn't afford. Mrs. Peterson's boarding house was a neat 2-story building that smelled of fresh bread and lye soap. The proprietress, a plump woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner, took one look at Sarah's travel-worn appearance and ushered her inside. "You poor dear, you look half dead on your feet. When's the last time you had a proper meal?" Before Sarah could answer, she found herself seated at a kitchen table with a bowl of beef stew and fresh, baked bread before her. Mrs. Peterson busied herself preparing a room, occasionally glancing at Sarah with motherly concern. "Sheriff Zane said you'd have a place for me," Sarah ventured between grateful bites. "Adam's a good judge of character," Mrs. Peterson nodded. "Been our sheriff for 5 years now. Came from Texas originally. Keeps to himself mostly, but fair and decent, which is more than I can say for some who have worn the badge in these parts." Sarah carefully stored away this information. "Is there work to be found in Stockton for a woman of limited practical skills?" Mrs. Peterson's eyebrows rose. "Educated, are you? Well, that's something we're short on. The schoolteacher left last month, married a cattle baron from Sacramento. The children have been running wild since. Hope flared in Sarah's chest. "I was educated at Miss Pembroke's Academy for Young Ladies. I could teach." Town council would need to approve, but with Adam's recommendation. Mrs. Peterson nodded thoughtfully. "Finish your meal. We'll get you settled, and tomorrow's soon enough to worry about employment." That night, Sarah slept in a real bed for the first time in weeks. Her dreams were troubled visions of her 7 brothers on horseback, scouring the countryside for her. The eldest, William, with his cold eyes and cruel streak. Thomas and George, the twins, silent and menacing. Jonathan, Richard, Edward, and young Henry, all bound by blood, and the twisted sense of family honor their father had instilled. In her dream they found her. But as they closed in, a lone figure on horseback appeared: Adam Zane, gun drawn and determination in his eyes. Sarah woke with a start, dawn barely breaking over the horizon. The room was chilly, and she wrapped her shawl tightly around her shoulders as she moved to the window. Stockton was beginning to stir, shopkeepers sweeping boardwalks, the blacksmith already at his forge, wisps of smoke rising from chimneys. And there, making his morning rounds, was Sheriff Adam Zane. Even from this distance, his confident stride and broad shoulders were unmistakable. He paused to help an elderly man navigate a muddy patch of road, then continued on, tipping his hat to everyone he passed. Sarah found herself smiling. Perhaps Stockton would indeed be the fresh start she needed. After washing and dressing in her second-best gown, navy blue with modest lace trim, Sarah made her way downstairs. Mrs. Peterson introduced her to the other boarders. A young bank clerk named Oliver, an elderly widow called Mrs. Farnsworth, and 2 sisters who worked at the town's only dress shop. "I mentioned you to Mayor Collins this morning," Mrs. Peterson told Sarah as she poured her coffee. "He's interested in meeting you about the teaching position. Said to bring you by his office when you're settled." By midday, Sarah had been interviewed, approved, and shown to the modest schoolhouse at the edge of town. Mayor Collins, a portly man with an impressive mustache, seemed more relieved than thorough in his questioning. 32 children ages 6 to 16, he explained, handing her a set of keys. "Previous curriculum materials are in the desk. Term should have started 2 weeks ago, so if you could begin tomorrow, the town would be most grateful." Sarah agreed, her heart lightening at the prospect of financial independence. The schoolhouse needed cleaning and the books were outdated, but it was hers a domain where she could be useful and respected. As she was examining the small collection of maps on the wall, the door creaked open. Sarah turned to find Adam Zane filling the doorframe, hat in hand. "Mayor Collins mentioned he'd hired Boston's finest to educate our young ones," Adam said, a hint of amusement in his voice. Sarah straightened. "Is there something amusing about education, Sheriff?" "Not at all. Just wondering what brings a clearly well-bred Eastern lady to a dusty mining town to teach children their letters." Sarah met his gaze steadily. "Perhaps the same thing that brings a Texan to California to pin on a badge, a desire for something new." Adam's eyes narrowed slightly, but a smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Fair enough." He stepped fully into the room, glancing around. "Place needs work. Nothing I can't manage. I don't doubt it." He studied her for a moment longer. "Some of the older boys can be challenging, especially to authority figures. If you have any trouble, I assure you, Sheriff, I'm quite capable of maintaining discipline in a classroom." Adam raised his hands in surrender. "I don't doubt that either, Miss Winters. Just offering my assistance should you need it." Something in his tone, a genuine concern rather than condescension, softened her response. "Thank you. I appreciate that." He nodded, replacing his hat. "Welcome to Stockton, Miss Winters. Hope it lives up to your expectations." As he turned to leave, Sarah felt a sudden impulse. "Sheriff." He paused at the door, looking back. Would you? That is, I would appreciate your insights on the families in town, to better understand my students. His face brightened with a genuine smile that transformed his features and sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. How about dinner at Callahan's tonight? 7 o'clock. Best food in town, and I can fill you in on all the local gossip. Before she could reconsider, Sarah found herself nodding. That would be helpful, thank you. After he left, Sarah pressed her hands to her flushed cheeks. It wasn't a romantic engagement, she told herself firmly. It was practical information gathering. Nothing more. Yet as she swept the schoolroom floor and arranged desks, she found herself anticipating the evening with a flutter of excitement she hadn't felt in years. Callahan's proved to be a respectable establishment with checkered tablecloths and polished glassware, not the rough saloon Sarah had half expected. Adam was waiting when she arrived, standing as she approached their table by the window. You look lovely, he said simply, pulling out her chair. Sarah had worn her best remaining gown, a deep green silk that brought out her eyes, with her hair arranged in a simple but elegant style. Thank you for suggesting this. It's nicer than I expected. Stockton has its rough edges, but we're not completely uncivilized, Adam replied with a wink. Mrs. Callahan came from San Francisco and brought her standards with her. The proprietress herself, a handsome woman in her 50s with streaks of gray in her dark hair, came to take their order, eyeing Sarah with open curiosity. So you're our new school teacher, she said. About time. My grandson Charlie has been running wild without his lessons. I look forward to meeting him tomorrow, Sarah replied. He's a handful, that one, takes after his grandfather. Mrs. Callahan glanced at Adam. The usual for you, Sheriff, please, and whatever the lady would like. After they ordered, Adam gave Sarah a comprehensive overview of Stockton's prominent families and their children, which ones were troublemakers, which excelled academically, which might need extra attention. The Donovan boys, 3 of them, haven't had much structure at home since their mother died last year. Their father means well but works the mine from dawn till dusk. Sarah listened intently, appreciating his knowledge and obvious care for the town's residents. You know everyone quite well. Part of the job, he said with a shrug. A good sheriff knows who needs watching and who needs protecting. Their food arrived, perfectly cooked steaks with potatoes and fresh vegetables, and the conversation shifted to more personal matters. You never did say why you left Boston, Adam mentioned casually, though his eyes were shrewd. Sarah tensed. As I said, I wanted something new. Most women don't travel clear across the country alone for something new unless they're running from something or someone. She set down her fork. And what were you running from when you left Texas, Sheriff Zane? A shadow crossed his face. Fair point. Let's just say I understand the need for fresh starts better than most. Their eyes met in silent understanding, and Sarah felt a connection that transcended mere attraction. Here was someone who might truly understand her situation without judgment. As they finished their meal, Adam unexpectedly asked, Can you ride, Miss Winters? Yes, quite well actually. My father insisted all his children learn. There's a place a few miles outside town I'd like to show you Sunday after church, if you're interested. Sarah hesitated only briefly. I would like that. Adam walked her back to the boarding house, maintaining a respectful distance that somehow made her more aware of his presence. At the door, he removed his hat again. Thank you for a lovely evening, she said softly. The pleasure was mine. He looked as though he might say more, then simply nodded. Good night, Miss Winters. I wish you luck with your first day of teaching tomorrow. Sarah watched him walk away, his tall figure silhouetted against the lamplight. For the first time since leaving Boston, she allowed herself to hope that perhaps she had found not just refuge but the beginnings of a new life. The schoolhouse bell rang clear and bright the next morning as Sarah welcomed her students. 32 curious faces stared back at her, expressions ranging from shy interest to open skepticism. "Good morning," she began, writing her name on the blackboard. "I am Miss Winters, and I will be your teacher. I look forward to learning all your names and discovering what you already know." The youngest children sat wide-eyed and attentive, while several of the older boys exchanged smirks. One lanky boy of about 15 lounged in his seat with deliberate disrespect. "James Donovan," he announced when Sarah reached his name on the roll. "And I don't see why we need schooling when there's money to be made in the mines." Sarah met his challenging stare calmly. "Education opens doors beyond the mines, Mr. Donovan. But more importantly, an educated miner is less likely to die from preventable accidents. Mathematics helps calculate safe timber supports. Chemistry explains why certain gases in mines can kill you." "Would you prefer ignorance with your pickaxe?" The boy blinked, clearly not expecting this response. A few of his classmates snickered and James straightened slightly in his seat. "I guess, when you put it that way." "Excellent. Now I need to assess where each of you stands in your studies. Please take out your slates." By lunchtime, Sarah had a clear picture of the educational challenges ahead. The younger children had basic reading skills but little else. The older ones had spotty knowledge. Some could calculate complex sums, but couldn't identify basic geographical features. None had consistent writing skills. She was dividing them into appropriate groups when the door opened and Adam entered, carrying a wooden crate. "Sheriff Zane," she acknowledged, aware of the children's suddenly rapt attention. "Miss Winters, thought you might need these." He set the crate on her desk. New readers and arithmetic books. Mayor Collins approved the expense this morning. Sarah's eyes widened as she examined the fresh, uncreased spines. "These are wonderful, thank you." "Just doing my part for education," he replied with a smile that made her heart skip. "How's the first day going?" "We're making progress, aren't we, students?" A chorus of mixed enthusiasm answered her. "Good to hear. Well, I won't interrupt further." Adam tipped his hat. "Ladies, gentlemen." His gaze lingered on James Donovan and his brothers with subtle warning before he departed. "Is Sheriff Zane courting you, Miss Winters?" piped up a small girl with braids. "Certainly not, Mary," Sarah replied, feeling her cheeks warm. "The sheriff is merely being helpful to a newcomer." "Now, let's continue with our groupings." The rest of the week passed in a blur of lessons, planning, and gradually winning the students' respect and trust. Sarah found herself exhausted but deeply satisfied each evening. Mrs. Peterson's boarding house became a welcome refuge, and she began to recognize familiar faces throughout town. On Sunday, she attended the small white church on Main Street, conscious of curious glances from the congregation. After the service, Adam appeared at her side, looking unusually formal in a clean black coat. "Ready for that ride I promised?" he asked. They collected horses from the livery, Adam's sturdy Palomino and a gentle bay mare for Sarah, and rode out of town along the river trail. The autumn air was crisp and clean, the California landscape vastly different from the manicured gardens of Boston. After about an hour's ride, they crested a hill, and Sarah gasped at the panoramic view. The valley stretched below them, the river winding like a silver ribbon through golden grasses. In the distance, the Sierra Nevada mountains rose majestic and snow-capped against the blue sky. "It's breathtaking," she whispered. "This is why I stayed," Adam said quietly. "First time I saw this view, I knew this was home." They dismounted, and Adam spread a blanket under a large oak tree. From his saddlebags, he produced bread, cheese, and apples for a simple picnic. "You mentioned your father taught you to ride," he said as they ate. Tell me about your family, Sarah tensed. Not much to tell. 7 brothers, I heard. When Sarah stared at him in shock, he added, small town. Mrs. Peterson mentioned you talked in your sleep one night, something about 7 brothers coming for you. Fear clutched at Sarah's heart. And you've waited all week to mention this. Figured you'd tell me when you were ready. His blue eyes held hers steadily. Are you in danger, Sarah? It was the first time he'd used her given name, and somehow that, coupled with his genuine concern, broke down her walls. My father died 6 months ago, she began, staring at the distant mountains. He left substantial gambling debts. My brothers, particularly William, the eldest, arranged for me to marry one of father's creditors, a man 3 times my age with a reputation for cruelty toward his previous wives. When I refused, William told me I had no choice. That family honor demanded it. Adam listened silently, his expression darkening. I fled in the night with what little money and possessions I could carry. They've been searching for me ever since. My youngest brother Henry secretly sent me a warning they've traced me as far as Sacramento. She met Adam's gaze. I should leave Stockton. They'll come eventually, and there, William especially, is dangerous when crossed. 7 brothers looking for you, Adam summarized quietly. Sarah nodded. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I didn't want to bring trouble to your town. Adam's hand covered hers, warm and reassuring. I'll welcome them all. She stared at him in disbelief. You don't understand. William has connections, money. The others follow him blindly. I understand more than you think. Adam's jaw tightened. I won't let anyone force you into anything against your will, Sarah. Not while I'm sheriff of Stockton. His fierce protection touched her deeply. Why would you risk yourself for someone you barely know? Adam's gaze softened. Because in the week you've been here, I've seen a woman of extraordinary courage and kindness. The children already adore you. Mrs. Peterson says you help with chores you're not obligated to do. You've faced every challenge with grace. He paused, then added more quietly, and because from the moment you stepped off that stagecoach, I haven't been able to get you out of my mind. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest. Adam, you don't need to say anything, he interrupted gently. I'm not asking for promises. Just let me help you. Let Stockton be your sanctuary for as long as you want it. Tears pricked her eyes. Thank you. They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the play of sunlight across the valley. Eventually, Adam began telling stories about his own past, growing up on a struggling ranch in Texas, losing his parents to fever, his time as a Union soldier despite his Southern roots, and eventually finding his way to law enforcement. I was a U.S. Marshal for a while, he explained. Tracked men across 3 states. That's how I know what I'm up against with your brothers. I've dealt with men like William before. As the sun began to lower in the sky, they reluctantly packed up their picnic and mounted their horses for the ride back to town. Sarah felt lighter having shared her burden, yet worried about involving Adam in her troubles. At the livery stable, Adam helped her dismount, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. Their eyes met, and Sarah saw something in his gaze that made her breath catch. Thank you for today, she said softly. My pleasure. He hesitated, then asked, would you allow me to call on you properly? I understand if you think it unwise with your situation. I would like that very much, Sarah interrupted, surprising herself with her boldness. A slow smile spread across Adam's face, crinkling the corners of his eyes. Good. That's good. As October turned to November, Sarah settled into life in Stockton. The school flourished under her guidance, with even James Donovan showing marked improvement. She began a ladies' reading circle that met weekly at the boarding house and helped organize a Thanksgiving celebration for the entire town. Adam called on her regularly, escorting her to church, community gatherings, and occasional dinners at Callahan's. Their growing attachment did not go unnoticed by the townspeople, who largely approved of the match between their respected sheriff and the refined schoolteacher. Only Mrs. Peterson expressed concern one evening as she helped Sarah mend a torn sleeve. "You're both good people who deserve happiness," she said carefully. "But those brothers of yours cast a shadow. Have you considered what happens when they find you?" "Adam believes we can handle it," Sarah replied, though anxiety knotted her stomach. "He says William can't force me to return. I'm of legal age." "Legal doesn't always matter out here," Mrs. Peterson cautioned. "Just be careful, dear." The first snow fell in early December, dusting Stockton with white and bringing excitement to the schoolchildren. Sarah organized a Christmas pageant, and the entire town turned out for the performance. Afterward, Adam escorted her home through the gently falling snow, both of them laughing as they caught flakes on their tongues like children. At the boarding house steps, he took her gloved hands in his. "I have something to ask you," he said, suddenly serious. Sarah's heart quickened. "Yes, Christmas is coming, and I thought—" He cleared his throat. "That is, I was wondering if you might consider, Sarah, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Joy surged through her, bright and overwhelming. "Adam!" The crack of a rifle shot shattered the moment. Adam instinctively pulled Sarah down, shielding her with his body as a bullet splintered the porch column beside them. "Inside now," he ordered, drawing his gun as he pushed her toward the door. Mrs. Peterson yanked it open, pulling Sarah through while Adam crouched on the porch, scanning the darkened street. "Did you see where it came from?" he asked sharply. "The alley across the way, Mrs. Peterson replied, surprisingly calm. "Single shooter, moved east after firing." Adam nodded. "Keep her inside. Lock the doors." "Adam, no." Sarah clutched his arm. "It's them it has to be. All the more reason for you to stay put." He gently but firmly removed her hand. "I'll be back, I promise." With that, he disappeared into the snowy night. Mrs. Peterson bolted the door behind him and calmly retrieved a shotgun from behind the parlor sofa. "Been expecting this," she muttered, checking the weapon with practiced ease. "Your brothers, I presume?" Sarah nodded numbly, fear constricting her throat. "William wouldn't have missed. That was a warning." "Well, they've picked the wrong town to threaten," Mrs. Peterson declared. "Adam's not alone, you know. Stockton takes care of its own." Sure enough, within minutes the street filled with armed townsmen, the blacksmith with his hammer, the saloon owner and several patrons with rifles, even young Oliver, the bank clerk, with a pistol that looked too large for his hand. Sarah watched through the window as Adam organized them into search parties. The snow continued to fall, erasing footprints almost as quickly as they were made. Dawn broke with no further incidents and no sign of the shooter. Adam returned, exhausted but unharmed, to find Sarah still waiting anxiously in the parlor. "Whoever it was, they've left town," he reported. "For now." "It's William," Sarah said with certainty. "He's letting me know he's found me." Adam took her hands. "Then we'll be ready when he returns." His eyes met hers intently. "You never answered my question, you know." Despite everything, Sarah smiled. Yes, I will marry you, Adam Zane." He pulled her into his arms, holding her as though he might never let go. "I will protect you," he promised against her hair, "with everything I am." They were married the following Sunday in the white church, with the entire town in attendance. Sarah wore a cream-colored gown hastily altered by the sisters from the dress shop, and carried evergreen branches tied with red ribbon. Adam looked handsome and solemn in his best clothes, his badge polished to a shine on his chest. Mrs. Peterson hosted a reception at the boarding house, and for a few precious hours, Sarah allowed herself to forget the threat hanging over them, basking in the joy of being Adam's wife and the warm acceptance of the townspeople who had become her friends. That night, in the small house Adam had purchased and furnished as a wedding surprise, they came together as husband and wife with tenderness and passion that left Sarah breathless and marveling at her good fortune. "I never thought I could be this happy," she whispered in the darkness, nestled against his chest. Adam's arms tightened around her. "This is just the beginning," he promised. "A lifetime of happiness." But the shadow of William and her other brothers loomed. Adam doubled the night patrols in town and insisted on escorting Sarah to and from the schoolhouse each day. The townspeople maintained a vigilant watch for strangers. January passed in tense anticipation. Adam reached out to his former martial contacts, learning that William Winters and several of his brothers had indeed been traced to California, but their current whereabouts were unknown. In February, a telegram arrived from Sacramento. Adam read it with a grim expression. "William and 3 of your brothers were seen boarding a train bound for Stockton. They'll be here by tomorrow." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. "Only 4 of them. The message only mentions 4. Could the others be coming separately? Perhaps." Sarah paced their small parlor. "William is clever. He wouldn't want to appear threatening by bringing all 7 at once." Adam nodded. "We'll be ready. Mayor Collins has deputized 10 men. The town's behind us, Sarah." That night they held each other close, whispering promises and reassurances. Sarah finally fell into restless sleep just before dawn, only to be awakened by the sound of horses in the street. Adam was already up and dressed, buckling on his gun belt. "Stay here," he ordered, his voice leaving no room for argument. From the window, Sarah watched her husband stride down the center of Stockton's main street to meet the 4 horsemen who had reined to a stop before the town's only hotel. Even from a distance, she recognized William's tall, imposing figure and the distinctive red hair of the twins, Thomas and George. The 4th rider was Richard, always William's most loyal supporter. Heart-pounding, Sarah quickly dressed. She knew Adam wanted her to stay hidden, but this was her battle as much as his. These were her brothers, her responsibility. Slipping out the back door, she made her way through side streets until she reached the hotel. "No quarrel with you, Sheriff," William's cultured voice carried clearly. "We've simply come to retrieve our sister and return her to Boston, where she belongs." "Your sister is now my wife," Adam replied steadily. "And she's not going anywhere she doesn't choose to go." William's laugh was cold. A hasty frontier marriage hardly compares to her prior commitments. "I made no commitments," Sarah announced, stepping into view. All heads turned. William's handsome face so like their father's registered momentary surprise before settling into a patronizing smile. "Sarah, dear sister, you've led us on quite a chase. Where are the others?" she demanded, moving to stand beside Adam, who shot her a look of mingled exasperation and admiration. "Jonathan, Edward, and Henry are securing our interests elsewhere," William replied smoothly. "They send their regards." Adam's hand rested casually near his holstered weapon. "Your sister has made her choice, Mr. Winters. I suggest you respect it." William's eyes hardened. "This doesn't concern you, Sheriff. Family matters should remain private." "When you fire shots at my wife, it becomes my concern," Adam countered. The twins exchanged glances and Richard shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. William's expression remained impassive. "I'm afraid I don't know what you're referring to." "December 12th, Adam said flatly. "A rifle shot fired at us from the alley across from the boarding house." For the first time, William looked genuinely confused. "We only arrived in California 2 weeks ago." Sarah studied her eldest brother. William was many things manipulative, cold, occasionally cruel, but rarely did he bother with outright lies when the truth served his purposes. "If not you, then who?" A tense silence fell over the group, broken by the sound of approaching footsteps. Mayor Collins and several other townsmen appeared, strategically positioning themselves within view. William assessed the situation with shrewd calculation. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion in private. The Callahan restaurant has private dining rooms," Adam suggested, his tone making it clear this wasn't simply a courtesy. 10 o'clock. William inclined his head in agreement. "Until then." As her brothers dismounted and entered the hotel, Sarah released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Adam turned to her, his expression a mixture of relief and frustration. "I told you to stay home." "They're my brothers," she replied simply. "This is my fight." His expression softened. "Our fight now." He glanced at the hotel. But if they didn't fire that warning shot, who did? The question haunted them as they prepared for the meeting. At precisely 10 o'clock, they entered Callahan's to find William and the others already seated in the private room at the back of the restaurant. Mrs. Callahan herself served coffee before withdrawing, closing the door behind her, but not, Sarah suspected, moving far from it. "I must say, little sister," William began, stirring sugar into his cup, "you've certainly created quite the scandal. Father would be most disappointed." "Father created his own scandal by gambling away our inheritance and then trying to sell his daughter to pay his debts," Sarah replied evenly. The twins looked uncomfortable at this blunt assessment. Richard stared fixedly at his coffee. "Crude, but essentially accurate," William conceded. However, the arrangement with Mr. Blackwell would have secured the family's financial future. "At the cost of Sarah's happiness and possibly her safety," Adam interjected. "From what I understand, Blackwell's previous wives met with unfortunate ends." William's eyes narrowed. "You seem remarkably well informed for a frontier lawman." "I have connections of my own, Mr. Winters." "Clearly." William set down his cup with deliberate precision. "Let me be direct then. Sarah's marriage was arranged with considerable financial incentives. Mr. Blackwell is not a man who accepts disappointment graciously. When Sarah fled, he took it as a personal affront." A cold realization dawned on Sarah. "The shot, it wasn't you, it was someone Blackwell sent." William nodded grimly. "He's hired men to find you, professionals, not family members stumbling across the country." He glanced at Adam. "No offense intended, Sheriff." "If you knew this," Adam asked slowly, "why come yourself? Why not simply warn Sarah?" "Because Blackwell's patience is running out. He's given us an ultimatum: return Sarah by spring, or he'll call in all of Father's debts immediately. The family will be ruined." Sarah's heart sank. "So you came to drag me back regardless of my wishes?" "We came," Richard spoke up unexpectedly, "to find a solution that doesn't require sacrificing you." He gave William a pointed look. "All of us agreed on that, even if some were reluctant." William sighed. "It's true. Contrary to what you might believe, Sarah, none of us relishes the idea of forcing you into an unwanted marriage. But Blackwell is powerful, vindictive, and now, apparently, willing to resort to violence." Adam leaned forward, his expression intense. "How much does your father owe?" $20,000. Adam whistled softly. "That's a considerable sum." "Hence our dilemma," William replied dryly. Sarah's mind raced. "What about Father's shipping interests? Surely those hold value, mortgaged to the hilt," Thomas said, breaking his silence. "Along with the house and most of its contents." "There must be a way," Sarah insisted. "Something we haven't considered." A heavy silence fell over the room as each person contemplated the seemingly impossible situation. Finally, Adam spoke. "What if we could prove Blackwell hired gunmen to kill Sarah? Wouldn't that violate whatever agreement you had with him? William looked thoughtful. It might, especially if there were witnesses. Blackwell values his social standing above all else. A scandal involving attempted murder would be problematic for him. Then we set a trap, Adam proposed. Draw out his hired guns and catch them red-handed, George frowned. Using Sarah as bait, too dangerous. Not necessarily, Adam countered. We control the situation, the timing, the location. It could work, Richard said slowly. But we'd need irrefutable proof linking the gunmen to Blackwell. They spent the next hour developing a plan. Despite initial tensions, Sarah was surprised to find her brothers working collaboratively with Adam, their shared concern for her safety overriding past grievances. We'll need a few days to prepare, Adam concluded as they finalized the details. In the meantime, I suggest you gentlemen make yourselves comfortable in Stockton. And visible, we want word to get back to Blackwell's men that the Winters family is reunited. As they left Callahan's, William held Sarah back momentarily. I owe you an apology, he said stiffly. I was overzealous in my efforts to protect the family interests. Sarah studied her eldest brother, seeing for the first time the strain etched around his eyes. You could have trusted me with the truth from the beginning. Perhaps, but you must admit, running away didn't suggest you were open to reasonable discussion. Being told I was to marry a man old enough to be my grandfather didn't suggest you were open to reasonable discussion either, she countered. A reluctant smile tugged at William's mouth. Touché. He glanced ahead where Adam walked with the others. Your husband seems capable. Coming from William, this was high praise indeed. He is, and kind and honorable. Good. You deserve that. He hesitated, then added more quietly, Henry sends his special regards. He wanted to come, but I thought it safer to leave him managing things in Boston. Blackwell doesn't know he warned you. Sarah's heart warmed at the mention of her youngest brother, barely 18 and always her favorite. Thank you for protecting him. The following days were tense but productive. Adam coordinated with his deputies and trusted townspeople, setting up observation points and planning for various contingencies. The Winters brothers integrated themselves into town life with surprising ease, Richard's charm winning over the saloon crowd, the twins' strength earning respect at the livery, and William's business acumen impressing the local merchants. Sarah continued teaching, though Adam insisted on having at least 2 armed men within shouting distance of the schoolhouse at all times. The children, sensing something afoot, were unusually well behaved. It's strange, Sarah confided to Adam one night as they lay in bed. For months I've been terrified of my brothers finding me, and now they're here, helping to protect me. Adam brushed a strand of hair from her face. Family is complicated, but when it matters most, blood often tells. I'm worried about this plan, she admitted. Not for myself, but for you. These are professional killers we're dealing with. I've faced worse, he assured her, though his eyes betrayed his own concern. Besides, I have 7 motivated Winters men on my side now. That's a formidable force. Sarah smiled at his phrasing. 7, your brothers and me. He kissed her softly. I'm a Winters man now too, in a way. The plan was set into motion a week later. Word was strategically leaked that Sarah would be traveling to Sacramento with William, supposedly having reconciled with her family and agreed to return east. The journey would take them through a narrow pass that provided the perfect location for an ambush and for Adam's counter-ambush. The morning of their departure dawned clear and cold. Sarah dressed carefully in her traveling clothes, her stomach knotting with anxiety. Adam helped her into the waiting carriage where William already sat. Remember, Adam instructed them both, stick to the plan, no heroics. William nodded solemnly. We'll see you at the rendezvous point. Adam's hand lingered on Sarah's. "Be careful." "You too," she whispered. The carriage set off with Thomas driving, heading north out of town. Adam and the others would follow shortly by different routes, positioning themselves along the pass before Sarah and William arrived. For the first hour, they traveled in tense silence. Finally, William spoke. "Your husband strikes me as a good man, intelligent, principled." "He is," Sarah agreed, surprised by the overture. "Father would have hated him," William added with a wry smile. Sarah couldn't help but laugh. "Undoubtedly." "I was wrong about you, Sarah. I thought you were being selfish, impulsive, but you've built something meaningful here." He gazed out the window at the passing landscape. "Perhaps there's more than one path to a worthwhile life." "There are infinite paths," she replied gently. "You don't have to follow Father's." William considered this. Perhaps not. The carriage rounded a bend and Thomas called down that they were approaching the pass. Sarah's heart began to race. William checked his concealed pistol, his expression turning focused. "Stay low when it happens," he reminded her. "The carriage is reinforced, as Adam suggested." Sarah nodded, trying to project a calm she didn't feel. The narrow pass stretched before them, rocky cliffs rising on both sides. Thomas slowed the horses to a walk, the only sound their hooves on the packed earth and the creak of the carriage springs. The first shot came without warning, splintering the wood beside the window. Sarah dropped to the floor as instructed, while William returned fire through the window. Above them, Thomas cursed as he whipped the horses into a gallop. Exactly as planned, they needed to reach the wider section of the pass where Adam and the others waited. More shots followed, bullets thudding into the reinforced sides of the carriage. Through a small gap in the curtains, Sarah glimpsed movement on the cliff tops, at least 3 men firing down at them. "Almost there," William grunted, reloading his pistol. The carriage burst from the narrow section of the pass into a broader clearing and all hell broke loose. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions as Adam's ambush sprang into action. Sarah heard shouts, the thunder of hooves, more gunshots. Suddenly, the carriage lurched violently, and Sarah was thrown against the side as it tipped onto 2 wheels before crashing back down. Thomas yelled that one of the horses had been hit. "Stay down," William ordered, kicking open the door on the far side from the gunfire and pulling Sarah with him. They tumbled onto the ground behind the relative safety of the carriage. Sarah caught glimpses of the battle around them, Richard and George on horseback, pursuing one of the attackers. Adam and several deputies exchanging fire with men on the ridge. Thomas, using the injured carriage horse as cover while he fired steadily upward. A bullet struck the ground inches from Sarah's hand, spraying dirt into her face. William cursed and fired back at a figure moving along the ridge line. "We need better cover," he shouted over the gunfire. Sarah spotted a cluster of boulders 20 yards away. "There," William nodded. "On 3. 1, 2, before he could say 3. A rider burst from behind a rock formation heading straight for them. Sarah recognized the cold determination in the man's eyes and knew instantly this was Blackwell's lead assassin, making his final desperate attempt to complete his mission. Time seemed to slow. The rider raised his pistol, aiming directly at Sarah. William moved to shield her, his own gun coming up too slowly. Sarah braced for the impact. A shot rang out, and the rider jerked backward, his pistol firing harmlessly into the air as he tumbled from his saddle. Sarah turned to see Adam standing 30 feet away, his smoking revolver still raised. Their eyes met across the clearing, relief flooding his features. The remaining attackers, seeing their leader fall, began to retreat. Richard and the twins pursued them, while Adam rushed to Sarah's side, gathering her into his arms. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, his hands moving over her, checking for injuries. "I'm fine," she assured him, though her voice shook. "Thanks to you." William picked himself up, dusting off his once immaculate suit. "Impressive shooting, Sheriff." "We got what we needed," Adam replied, nodding toward the fallen leader. "Papers in his saddlebags directly linking him to Blackwell, plus 2 prisoners who I suspect will be willing to testify in exchange for leniency." It was over. The ride back to Stockton was subdued, each person processing the morning's events in their own way. Sarah found herself trembling occasionally with delayed shock, grateful for Adam's solid presence beside her. The town welcomed them as heroes when news of the confrontation spread. That evening, Callahan's hosted an impromptu celebration, the dining room filled with townspeople and the Winters brothers, united in victory. "A telegram arrived while you were gone," Mayor Collins announced, handing a paper to William. "From Boston." William read it, his expression shifting from concentration to surprise and finally to satisfaction. "It seems news travels fast. Mr. Blackwell has suddenly recalled an old agreement with our father that cancels all outstanding debts." He looked up with a wry smile. "Apparently, the attempt on Sarah's life was a terrible misunderstanding by overzealous employees acting without authorization." "How convenient," Adam remarked dryly. "Indeed." William folded the telegram carefully. "Nevertheless, it resolves our immediate financial concerns. The family business can recover in time without Blackwell's interference." Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. "So it's truly over." "It appears so." William raised his glass. "To my remarkable sister and her equally remarkable husband. May your life together be long and considerably less eventful than recent days." "I'll drink to that," Adam agreed, his hand finding Sarah's beneath the table. Later that night, alone in their home, Sarah and Adam held each other close, the events of the day finally catching up to them. "I was so afraid," Sarah admitted, her face pressed against his chest. "When I saw that rider aiming at me, all I could think was that I might never see you again." Adam's arms tightened around her. "I wouldn't have let that happen." "My hero," she said, only half teasing. "My brothers were impressed, you know, even William, though he'd never admit it directly." "They're not so bad," Adam conceded, "for Eastern gentlemen." Sarah laughed, then grew serious. "They're leaving tomorrow. William says there's no reason to delay returning to Boston now that the Blackwell situation is resolved." "Will you miss them?" She considered this. "Yes, surprisingly. These past days have reminded me that despite everything, they are my family." "William may be domineering, but he does care in his way." "You could visit Boston someday," Adam suggested, "when things are more settled. Perhaps." Sarah traced the line of his jaw with her fingertips. "But Stockton is my home now. You are my home." Adam kissed her, a slow, tender affirmation of their bond. "Always." The Winters brothers departed the next morning on the eastbound stage, with promises of correspondence and future visits. Sarah was surprised by the emotion she felt watching them go, particularly when William embraced her awkwardly but sincerely. "Your husband is a fortunate man," he told her, "as are we to have you as our sister." "Take care of Henry," she replied, "and yourself." "I'll send your things from Boston," he promised. "The family portraits, your books, mother's jewelry." "Thank you," she smiled. "Tell everyone, tell them I'm happy here." As the stage pulled away, Adam's arm settled around her shoulders. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Zane?" Sarah leaned into his embrace, watching the dust settle on the road. "Yes." Spring came to Stockton in a riot of wildflowers and fresh green growth. Sarah's school flourished, with plans for expansion as the town continued to grow. Adam's reputation as sheriff brought stability and increasing prosperity to the region, with new settlers arriving regularly. In April, Sarah received a large shipment from Boston, her books, cherished mementos, and a surprisingly generous letter from William indicating that her portion of the gradually recovering family business would be held in trust for her. "This is unexpected," she told Adam as they unpacked the crates in their parlor. "Not entirely," he replied. "Your brothers saw what you've built here. They respect that." Sarah placed a family portrait on the mantel, studying the formal poses of her parents and all 8 Winters children. "It's strange to think how differently everything might have turned out. No use dwelling on might have beens," Adam said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "I prefer to focus on what is, and what will be." She turned in his embrace, looping her arms around his neck. "And what will be, Sheriff Zane?" "Well, Mrs. Zane," he said, his blue eyes twinkling, "I thought you might like to know that I've purchased that parcel of land by the river, the one with the view of the mountains." Sarah's eyes widened. "For a house." "A bigger house," he clarified. "With room for a growing family." "A growing." Sarah's hand moved unconsciously to her stomach. "Adam, are you saying you want children?" "I'm saying," he replied softly, "that the doctor confirmed yesterday what I suspect you've already guessed. We're going to have a baby come winter." Joy burst through Sarah like sunshine through clouds. "You know how? Mrs. Peterson noticed you turning green at the smell of coffee last week, and you've been tired lately. I had my suspicions." Tears of happiness filled Sarah's eyes. "I was waiting to be certain before telling you." Adam knelt before her, pressing a gentle kiss to her still flat abdomen. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "Your mama and I are very eager to meet you." Sarah ran her fingers through his hair, her heart overflowing with love. "I never imagined I could be this happy." He rose to his feet, gathering her in his arms. "This is just the beginning," he promised. "Just the beginning." In December, as the first snows blanketed Stockton, Sarah gave birth to a healthy son they named James Henry Zane. The entire town celebrated, and telegrams of congratulations arrived from Boston, where the news was received with delight by Sarah's brothers. 2 years later, a daughter joined the family, Elizabeth Rose, followed by twins Robert and Michael the year after that. The Zane home on the hillside with its view of the mountains became known for its warmth and hospitality, often hosting visitors from town and occasionally from as far away as Boston, when one or another of Sarah's brothers made the journey west. Adam's reputation as a fair and capable lawman spread throughout California, bringing offers of more prestigious positions, all of which he declined. "My place is here," he would always say, looking toward the schoolhouse where Sarah still taught, or their home where their children played. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Adam took Sarah back to the overlook where he had first shown her the view that had captured his heart. 10 years, he marveled, his once jet-black hair now showing touches of silver at the temples. "Did you ever imagine when you stepped off that stagecoach that life would bring you here?" Sarah leaned against him, watching the sunset paint the mountains in gold and crimson. "Never. I was running away, not toward anything. Finding you, finding Stockton, it was more than I dared hope for." "Your brothers visit more often than I expected," Adam noted with amusement. "William's actually developing quite the Western business interests." "He's changed," Sarah agreed. "They all have, as have I." Adam turned to face her, taking her hands in his. "You've blossomed. From a frightened young woman to the heart of this community, the heart of our family." His blue eyes, still as intense as the day they met, held hers. "Loving you has been the greatest adventure of my life." Sarah reached up to touch his face, the face she had woken to for a decade of mornings, the face she hoped to see for decades more. "When I warned you about my 7 brothers looking for me, I never imagined you'd truly welcome them all into our lives, our home, our family." Adam laughed, the sound carrying across the valley. Best decision I ever made. He pulled her close. Besides marrying you, of course. As they stood together watching the day's light fade into evening, Sarah reflected on the strange and wonderful journey that had brought her to this moment. From Boston society to a frontier schoolteacher, from a woman fleeing her family to one embracing the family she had created. The road had been unexpected, occasionally dangerous, but ultimately perfect in its way. "We should head back," Adam said eventually. "The children will be waiting." Sarah nodded, but lingered a moment longer, imprinting the view and this moment in her memory. "I love you, Adam Zane, and I love you, Sarah Winters Zane, now and always." Hand in hand, they rode back to Stockton, to their children, to the life they had built together, a life neither had imagined but both had created, step by step, choice by choice, day by day. A life of love that had begun with a warning, a challenge, and a brave response that had changed everything. "I'll welcome them all,"